From red carpets to cold prison walls, these once beloved celebrities lost their way in the most shocking ways. Fame, fortune, and adoration vanished in the blink of an eye, replaced by handcuffs and haunting regrets. These stars weren't just imprisoned, they were trapped in the rubble of their own downfall. The truth is darker than you can imagine. She was WWE's original diva, Tammy "Sunny" Sytch, lighting up the wrestling ring with beauty, charisma, and undeniable star power during the Attitude Era of the 1990s. Voted most downloaded celebrity on AOL in 1996, Sunny was wrestling's first internet sensation. Beloved by millions of fans who watched her manage top stars like Shawn Michaels and the Body Donnas. But her post-wrestling life spiraled into a devastating pattern of addiction, legal troubles, and reckless behavior that would culminate in tragedy. For years, Sytch battled alcohol addiction, racking up multiple DUI arrests and becoming a cautionary tale of squandered potential. The final irreversible blow came in March 2022, when Sytch, driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level more than 3 times the legal limit, caused a horrific car crash in Florida that killed 75-year-old Jerome Peck. The innocent grandfather was stopped in traffic when Sytch's car slammed into his vehicle at high speed, killing him instantly and injuring others. The wrestling world that once celebrated her now watched in horror as details emerged of her complete disregard for public safety. In November 2023, she was sentenced to 17 years in prison, followed by 8 years of probation. Her fall from wrestling royalty to convicted felon represents one of the sport's most heartbreaking spirals, a sobering reminder that addiction destroys not just the addict, but innocent lives in its path. She flaunted designer bags, private jets, and extravagant parties on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But behind Jen Shah's glittering facade was a multi-million-dollar scam targeting the most vulnerable. While she boasted luxury on screen, she was secretly running a nationwide telemarketing scheme that defrauded elderly victims out of their savings. In 2021, the FBI swooped in. Her arrest was caught on camera, unfolding like a scene from her own reality show. At first, she denied everything, but when the evidence stacked up, Shah pleaded guilty. In 2023, she was sentenced to 6.5 years in federal prison. From reality TV queen to convicted fraudster, Jen Shah's downfall was as dramatic as her on-screen persona. Once the fearsome godfather of West Coast rap, Suge Knight, ruled the streets and the charts with an iron fist. As co-founder of Death Row Records, he helped launch legends like Tupac and Dr. Dre, but his empire was built on intimidation, chaos, and street justice. In 2015, that empire came crashing down in a flash of tire smoke and tragedy. Caught on surveillance, Knight ran over 2 men in a parking lot dispute, killing one. The incident sent shockwaves through the music industry. The kingpin of gangster rap was now a defendant in a murder trial. Facing life, he took a plea deal. But the damage was done. Sentenced to 28 years, Knight now resides behind bars, far from the luxury and power he once commanded. His tale is one of music, mayhem, and a legacy forever stained by violence. Once crowned the king of R&B, R. Kelly's voice ruled the airwaves and his music defined a generation. But behind the chart-topping hits and seductive lyrics was a predator running an empire of manipulation and abuse. For decades, whispers surrounded him. Then came the storm. Victims spoke out, the evidence mounted, and the mask finally shattered. In a bombshell trial, Kelly was convicted of orchestrating a criminal enterprise that lured, groomed, and exploited young women and girls. The stories were harrowing, the testimonies heartbreaking. In 2022, he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. From Grammy stages to a cold concrete cell, R. Kelly's fall is one of music's darkest scandals. No amount of fame could protect him from the truth, and his legacy is now etched in shame. He was the fan-favorite goofball on that 70s show with his laid-back swagger and magnetic grin. But behind Danny Masterson's cool guy charm was a dark secret that would destroy his career and his life. In a shocking twist that rocked Hollywood, multiple women came forward with harrowing allegations of sexual assault, lifting the veil on years of abuse hidden beneath the glitz. The trial was explosive. Testimonies were raw, emotional, and damning. The image of the lovable sitcom star crumbled in real time. Masterson showed no remorse as the court found him guilty. The sentence, 30 years to life. No punchlines, no applause, just the cold clang of a prison gate. Once a rising star adored by millions, Masterson now spends his days in a prison cell, his legacy shattered. He played a cop on TV, but in real life, Michael Jace became the villain in a horrifying true crime that stunned the nation. Best known as the calm, upright officer on The Shield, Jace's real-life rage turned deadly one tragic night in May 2014. Inside the walls of their Los Angeles home, in front of their own children, Jace shot and killed his wife in cold blood. The betrayal was unbearable. The shock national. The media erupted. TV cop kills wife in front of kids. The public, once charmed by his on-screen presence, was left speechless by the horror unfolding off-screen. During the harrowing trial, details emerged that painted a portrait of a man unrecognizable from the hero he once portrayed. The jury didn't hesitate. Jace was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Hip-hop mogul and Bad Boy Records founder Sean Diddy Combs was arrested in September 2024 on federal charges that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. The man who launched the careers of Notorious B.I.G., Maze, and countless others now faces racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution charges. Federal prosecutors allege Combs ran a criminal enterprise for over a decade, using his business empire to facilitate what they term freak-offs, elaborate coercive sexual performances involving commercial sex workers and unwilling participants. The indictment details allegations of violence, intimidation, and blackmail to silence victims. Raids on his Miami and Los Angeles mansions uncovered firearms, ammunition, and over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Currently held without bail in federal custody, Combs faces a potential life sentence if convicted. His trial is set for 2025, marking the potential end of one of hip-hop's most powerful figures. Darren Sharper was a football legend, an NFL safety with Super Bowl rings and a polished media persona. Fans adored him, broadcasters praised him, but no one saw the predator lurking behind the charm. In a shocking investigation that spanned multiple states, Sharper was exposed as the mastermind of a sickening pattern, drugging and assaulting women. The scale was staggering. Multiple victims, multiple cities, a coordinated campaign of horror. When the truth emerged, America was stunned. The star athlete who once symbolized strength and excellence was now facing charges that read like a criminal thriller. In 2016, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. From primetime TV to a prison bunk, Sharper's legacy has been obliterated. His story is a terrifying lesson that predators don't always look like monsters, and even heroes can hide the darkest secrets. He was once America's unlikely hero, the guy who lost hundreds of pounds eating Subway sandwiches and became the wholesome face of a national brand. Jared Fogle turned a personal transformation into global fame, fortune, and fanfare. But behind the smiling pitchman was a dark and deeply disturbing secret that would shatter his image forever. In 2015, the FBI uncovered that Fogle was engaged in a sickening double life, possessing and distributing child abuse material and seeking illegal contact with minors. The revelations were horrifying, the betrayal of public trust absolute. He was swiftly convicted and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Gone is the image of inspiration and health. In its place stands a convicted predator, locked away and disgraced. He was the kingmaker of Hollywood, the man behind Oscar-winning hits, red carpet legends, and the most powerful studio in Tinseltown. Harvey Weinstein could make or break careers with a single phone call, but behind the curtain was a predator operating unchecked for decades. In 2017, the dam finally broke. Dozens of women stepped forward with horrifying stories of abuse, coercion, and career sabotage. The Me Too movement exploded, and Weinstein's name became synonymous with exploitation. In 2020, he was sentenced to 23 years in New York. In 2022, Los Angeles courts added another 16 years. Now Weinstein rots in a prison far from the glitz and glamour he once ruled. He was the breakout star of Netflix's hit docuseries Cheer, a bubbly, high-energy cheerleader who lit up screens and inspired millions with his infectious spirit. But behind the viral fame and wholesome image, Jerry Harris was hiding a disturbing double life that would leave fans shocked and betrayed. In 2020, Harris was arrested for soliciting explicit content from minors online. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of online exploitation involving multiple victims. The contrast was gut-wrenching. America's cheer darling now accused of preying on the very fans who adored him. In 2022, Harris was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. From Netflix glory to inmate, his fall was swift and shattering. He was the poster boy for family values on 19 Kids and Counting, the reality TV series that celebrated faith, discipline, and wholesomeness. But behind the carefully crafted image, Josh Duggar hid secrets so vile they shocked even his most loyal supporters. In 2021, Duggar was arrested and later convicted for possessing child abuse material discovered in a hidden partition on his work computer. The investigation revealed a double life that contradicted everything he once claimed to stand for. In court, the evidence was graphic and undeniable. Sentenced to 12.5 years in federal prison, Duggar's fall from grace was as swift as it was devastating. From devout role model to disgraced convict, his name now represents betrayal, hypocrisy, and the dark side of false virtue. She was once the girl next door on Smallville, beloved for her sweet smile and charm. But Allison Mack's real-life role was far darker. Behind the scenes, she was a key player in Nexium, a so-called self-help group that unraveled into a secretive, abusive cult. Mack wasn't just a follower. She was a recruiter, luring women into the group under the guise of empowerment, only for them to be branded, manipulated, and abused. When the truth came out, it stunned Hollywood. She was arrested and charged with racketeering and conspiracy in one of the most disturbing celebrity-linked scandals in recent memory. In 2021, Mack was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Her fall from rising star to convicted cult leader shocked fans and peers alike. From the halls of Riverdale to a chilling courtroom confession, Ryan Grantham's descent into darkness stunned fans and the entire entertainment world. Known for his soft-spoken roles and baby-faced innocence, no one could have predicted the horror that lay beneath. In a confession that rocked headlines, Grantham admitted to the unthinkable, murdering his own mother while she played the piano at home. The motive remains a haunting mystery. Even more disturbing, he had packed his car with weapons and Molotov cocktails, allegedly planning to kill Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau next. Though he never followed through, the revelation painted a terrifying portrait of a young star lost in a spiral of darkness. Sentenced to life with no parole for 14 years, Grantham's cell is now the only stage he'll ever know. He was America's dad, the beloved comedian who taught life lessons on The Cosby Show and made millions laugh with his wholesome humor. Bill Cosby's squeaky clean image made him one of the most trusted figures in entertainment for decades. But behind the sweaters and fatherly smile was a calculated predator who used his power and influence to drug and assault women for years. The accusations began surfacing in the mid-2000s. But it wasn't until 2014 that comedian Hannibal Buress called Cosby a rapist during a stand-up routine, sparking a media firestorm. Suddenly, dozens of women came forward with eerily similar stories spanning decades. In 2018, Cosby was convicted of aggravated indecent assault and sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. Though his conviction was later overturned on a legal technicality in 2021, the damage to his legacy was irreversible. The man who once embodied moral authority became a symbol of how power corrupts and how institutional protection can shield predators for far too long. She was Silicon Valley's golden girl, young, brilliant, and hailed as the female Steve Jobs. Elizabeth Holmes promised to revolutionize healthcare with her company Theranos and a device that could run dozens of tests from a single drop of blood. Investors poured in hundreds of millions. The media crowned her a tech queen, but it was all a lie. Theranos' technology didn't work. Behind the glossy facade was fraud on a massive scale. When whistleblowers and investigative reporters uncovered the truth, the house of cards collapsed. Holmes went from billionaire to criminal in the blink of an eye. In 2022, she was sentenced to over 11 years for conspiracy and wire fraud. Gone were the black turtlenecks and TED Talks, replaced by a prison uniform and a legacy of deception. Before he was a Hollywood A-lister commanding millions per film, Mark Wahlberg had a past darker than most fans realize. Growing up in Boston's rough Dorchester neighborhood, Young Mark was consumed by racism and violence. At just 16, Wahlberg was arrested for brutally assaulting two Vietnamese men in separate racially charged attacks that left one partially blind. He hurled racial slurs while beating a middle-aged man with a wooden stick, then later punched another Vietnamese man in the eye, permanently damaging his vision. Charged with attempted murder, he ultimately pleaded guilty to felony assault and served just 45 days in jail, a sentence many considered far too lenient for such vicious hate crimes. The incident remained buried beneath his later fame as Marky Mark and his transformation into a respected actor and producer. While Wahlberg has expressed regret and attempted to make amends, even requesting a pardon in 2014, which he later withdrew, the scar on his legacy remains. His story stands out not just for the crime, but for the rare trajectory from violent felon to Hollywood royalty, raising difficult questions about redemption, privilege, and second chances. He was the flamboyant glam rock icon of the 1970s, with glitter in his name and millions of fans worldwide. Gary Glitter, born Paul Francis Gadd, strutted across stages in platform boots and sequined outfits. His anthems like Rock and Roll Part 2 became stadium staples. But behind the theatrical persona was one of music's most disturbing predators. His downfall began in 1999 when a computer technician discovered thousands of child abuse images on his laptop while servicing it. This led to a conviction and 4-month prison sentence. But it was only the beginning. Inside the cage, Jonathan War Machine Copenhaver was all fists, fury, and fight. An MMA warrior with a massive fan base who lived for the roar of the crowd and the thrill of victory. His reputation in mixed martial arts was built on raw aggression and an unrelenting fighting spirit that made him both feared and celebrated. But what happened outside the ring was far more brutal and far more real, revealing a darkness that no amount of athletic prowess could justify or excuse. In a horrific act that stunned the sports world and sent shockwaves through the MMA community, War Machine viciously attacked his ex-girlfriend, adult film star Christy Mack, in an assault so savage it defied comprehension. The attack took place in the early morning hours of August 8, 2014, when he broke into her Las Vegas home and unleashed a fury that would leave permanent scars. He left her with 18 broken bones scattered across her body, a ruptured liver that required emergency medical intervention, missing teeth, and a face nearly beyond recognition, swollen and brutalized to the point where even close friends struggled to identify her. The details were grotesque and difficult to process, the violence relentless and methodical, carried out over the course of hours with calculated cruelty. The motive, as prosecutors would later establish, was control, rage, jealousy, and a deeply broken psyche that couldn't accept the end of their relationship. Christy Mack's injuries were so severe that doctors weren't sure she would survive the night, and the psychological trauma would haunt her for years to come. In court, the evidence was undeniable and overwhelming. Photographs of the victim's injuries, medical records documenting the extensive damage, and Mack's own powerful testimony painted a picture of sustained brutality that left the courtroom in stunned silence. The jury returned a guilty verdict on 29 felony counts, including kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder, rejecting the defense's attempts to minimize the severity of the crimes. The sentence was severe and definitive life in prison, with only a sliver of hope for freedom. Parole would only be possible after 36 years, meaning War Machine wouldn't even be eligible for consideration until he was well into his 70s. Once cheered by thousands of fans who packed arenas to watch him fight, who bought his merchandise and followed his career with passion, War Machine now sits in silence behind concrete walls and razor wire, surrounded by the inescapable consequences of his uncontrolled rage. The man who once basked in the spotlight of athletic glory now faces decades of solitude, his legacy forever tarnished. His name synonymous, not with championship fights, but with unforgivable violence against someone he claimed to love.